Hey, fun-loving couple, Karen and Rhodey's Jam Cave. Welcome in, folks. All right, I guess we'll wait just a couple more minutes. I'll get a few more people in here. I thank you guys for joining. Today's topic, and I'm sure you guys have already read the title, but stories of Arizona's most famous robbers, rustlers, and bandits. I want to let you guys know I did meet a really nice guy just a few minutes ago. His name was Clayton, and yeah, he'd give me some info on about going to the bookstore museum down the way over here, which I could probably do a video on some of the stuff that they have in there, and probably get a good story going from the owner of the shop, which would be really nice. But he's a really nice guy, Clayton. He's actually not from here. He just visits, during the winter time, I believe. He does have his own place elsewhere, his own ranch. Yeah, the museum just down the street here actually has a bunch of old relics and artifacts in there, and things that look pretty interesting. Every time I've rode by on the sidewalk by these places, that yeah, some interesting stuff. Yes, Karen. Yes, exactly. I guess we can go ahead and get started. Guess we have enough people in here. Okay, let's go ahead and get started, folks. Okay, it's the Wickenburg Massacre. Just after sunup on November 5th, 1871, the Arizona Stage Company coach, crowded with 8 passengers, pulled out of Wickenburg for its run to the Colorado River town of Ehrenberg, a distance of just over 100 miles. All but one individual had started the journey the evening before in Prescott. Aaron Barnett first boarded in Wickenburg and settled in beside his sleepy riding companions just a few miles outside of Wickenburg. Wait, no, never mind, there was a period there, sorry. Just a few miles outside of Wickenburg, he realized he had forgotten some unfinished business in town. Asking the driver to stop, Barnett got off and watched the carriage again heading west toward Ehrenberg before he set out on foot to a few short miles back to Wickenburg. Whatever Barnett forgot to do that day saved his life. Of the remaining 7 passengers and 1 driver on the ill-fated stage, 6 would never live to see the sunrise again. Dutch John Lance had been employed by the Arizona Stage Company just a few weeks when he took the reins of the 4-horse coach early that Monday morning. This would be only his second trip down the well-traveled La Paz Road from Wickenburg to Ehrenberg. There were always reports of Indians waylaying travelers and even some instances of murder along the central Arizona route, but he had no intention of letting his passengers fall to such fate before he deposited them in Ehrenberg. From there, most would board a steamer for the rundown river to Yuma and on to California. As he inspected the wagon one last time, he watched his travelers climb aboard. They had enjoyed but a few hours' rest after arriving from Prescott well after midnight. Hey, Cindy D, welcome in. Druzy, what's up, bro? Peter Hamill and George Salmon climbed inside the coach, glad to be returning to their families in California after working with the Wheeler expedition. One of 4 research missions exploring Western territories. The results brought back by these parties would include topographic and geological maps, inventory of flora, fauna, strata, and mineral resources, plus interpretations of geologic occurrences. George Wheeler's survey was the only military expedition and had concentrated on water and terrain, studies that would affect future military operations. 22-year-old journalist Frederick Wadsworth Loring had also traveled with the Wheeler expedition, reporting back to Eastern publications. Before he left on the tour, Loring trimmed his hair very short and jokingly remarked that the Apaches would not find him a worthy adversary with so few locks to scalp. He chose to ride next to the driver. Climbing up beside Loring and Lance, Charles Adams, who had been working on the flour depot of W. Bichard and Company in Prescott, was grateful to be heading home to his wife and children in San Francisco. Frederick Chahome settled inside the coach beside Hamill and Salmon. Chahome had recently sold his jewelry business in Prescott and was on his way to Philadelphia. He planned to board a ship in San Francisco and travel by way of Panama. Hey, what's happening, Luke? Luke Mitchell. The only woman on the stage, 24-year-old Molly Shepard, also had sold her business in Prescott and was reportedly carrying as much as $15,000 in cash, plus a large stash of jewelry. Molly had run a successful house of pleasure since 1868, but it was time to get out of town and start elsewhere. She planned on settling in Panama City. William Kruger, a clerk with Arizona Territory's Army Quartermaster, would lead the stage of Ehrenberg, where he had business to conduct. He was supposedly carrying between $30,000 and $40,000 in military funds. Kruger's blemished reputation included a suspicion that he sometimes made a tidy profit from the sale of Army mules and equipment. All right, 10 and 10. Thank you. Man, I love that. I love when the numbers match like that. That's awesome. Once Aaron Barnett left the stage to walk back to Wickenburg, the remaining passengers started a card game of Freeze Out, a popular gambling pastime. Molly graciously spread her luxurious fur cape across everyone's knees to serve as a table, and was often the case. Most of the passengers placed their weapons under the seat cushions so they could enjoy a more comfortable ride. The stagecoach clipped along for the next hour without a hitch. About 8 miles out of Wickenburg, Dutch Lance had just started the horses into a wash when he saw the spindly bushes beside the road come to life. Apaches! He shouted as the band of marauders quickly surrounded the carriage, firearms blazing a torrent of bullets. The first salvo hit Lance dead on. As he dropped the reins, the horses careened off the road. Inside the coach, Shaholm died with cards still in his hand, and Hamel fell across Molly's fur coat. Within seconds, another round of gunfire ratcheted across the wagon. Bullets slammed into Adam's spine, leaving him paralyzed and at the mercy of his assailants. Loring fell with the knife embedded in his chest. Although Salmon managed to flee the coach, he was brought down within minutes. Kruger, suffering only minor wounds, later claimed he threw the hysterical and wounded Molly to the floor of the wagon to protect her from further gunfire. When the shooting abruptly ceased after just two volleys and a deadly calm enveloped the bloody wagon. Kruger waited only seconds before shoving Molly out of the stage into the desert. According to Kruger's later testimony, several gunmen chased the fleeing couple, but he managed to fight them off, even wounding two with his deadly aim, all the while keeping the fainting Molly tucked under his arm. But one report credits Molly with doing her share by threatening the approaching desperados with a broken whiskey bottle. Kruger claimed the assailants pursued Molly and him but a short distance before they scattered across the desert like a herd of cattle on the run. The couple struggled along the desolate road until they spotted a mail wagon coming their way. The driver was horrified at the tale he'd heard and seen Molly's festering injuries, 3 bullet wounds plus wooden splinters from the coach deeply embedded in her arm. He sequestered the pair behind his wagon, gave them an ample supply of water, and rode off on a spare horse toward Wickenburg to report the ghastly killings. Kruger and Molly were taken to Camp Day Creek for medical treatment with Molly still clinging to her precious fur cape, its plush elegance riddled with 9 bullet holes. The dead were returned to Wickenburg for burial. Only Salmon was buried at the site and his body was eventually exhumed and interred beside the others. When the Arizona Miner reported the incident, it noted Salmon received a severe wound and fell from the stage, but recovering ran about 20 yards, was followed, overtaken, killed, and scalped. The whole hair, ears, skin of the face being taken off to the mouth. Shit, that's pretty gruesome. 6 men, said the miner, who left Wickenburg full of life and hope in the happy anticipation of soon again greeting their friends after a prolonged absence. Lay side by side, rigid in death and drenched in blood, the unavenged victims of a murder as dark and as damnable as ever stained the hands of an assassin. Kruger and Molly survived their injuries and eventually made it to California. But a few years later, Kruger reported that Molly had succumbed to her wounds. She never made it to Panama City. As a sole survivor, William Kruger often related his version of the Wickenburg massacre, and many believed every word he said. Others to this day question many of his details of the slaying. There are almost as many opinions of who attacked the Wickenburg stagecoach that crisp November morning as there were victims of the massacre and mayhem. Initial reaction placed blame on the Apache Mojave Indians sequestered at Camp Day Creek about 25 miles from Wickenburg. Ironically, the camp was established to protect travelers along the La Paz Road. The attacking warriors, who were horseless, were purportedly wearing moccasins specific to the Apache Mojave. The tribe formed its moccasins by pulling the upper part of its leather footgear down over the lower section and lacing it to the sole with rawhide, creating a distinct foot pattern. Other tribes in the area pulled the leather up around the top of the foot, leaving a smoother footprint. Let's see. Hey, Linda Guess. Hey, welcome to my channel. I appreciate you being here. It's awesome. Oh, it's always awesome to see a new face in chat. Thank you. The posse followed a trail that led to Camp Day Creek. Along the way, they discovered a honey bag containing bone powder, a sacred medicine among the Apache Mojave. They also found a deck of cards with the corners cut off, a practical of local Indians. One of the most bizarre pieces of evidence investigated was excrement found in the massacre site that supposedly contained mesquite beans, a favorite of Indians in the area. Yee. Almost like some CSI stuff there, looking through the excrement, finding mesquite beans. Upon further investigation, however, the beans were found to be pumpkin seeds, which Indians rarely ate. Within days of the massacre, several Apache Mojaves showed up with cash in their pockets and were immediately suspected of participating in the massacre. However, the Wells Fargo box left at the murder scene, purportedly containing a great deal of cash, had not been opened. 2 men were scalped, Salmon and Hamill, and this almost solidified the argument that Indians had instigated the Wickenburg massacre. Enough evidence existed, however, to question whether Indians perpetuated the attack. Indians would not have left surviving horses. The lead horse had been killed and another wounded, as horse meat was a favorite dish. Colorful shawls, jewelry, and even the horse's leather harness would have been confiscated if Indians had been the culprits, since they were all highly valued items. The surviving horses had been freed and the harness found neatly stacked. Indians would not have wasted time on this task. So it wasn't the Indians then. Some of the mail bags were cut open, but the envelopes found strewn across the desert had been carefully torn off at one end, not ripped apart. Ammunition was left at the scene. Indians desperately needed ammunition and would not have ignored this stash. The posse found no other tracks along the path traveled by William Kruger and Molly Shepard. If Indians had followed them, the couple would not have escaped. Warring Indians rarely left survivors. Kruger and Molly both claimed they saw about 15 men clad in blue soldiers' trousers, standard issue for reservation Indians, coming at them with pistols blazing. But neither could positively say whether they were Indians, Mexicans, or white men. Another faction held local white men responsible for purposely pointing the finger of blame at the Indians. Businessmen made money when native tribes rebelled at this, as this forced the federal government to pump more money and troops into the territory. Yet another conjuncture blamed Mexican bandits for the attack, led by the nefarious outlaw Joaquin Barbie. About 2 months before the massacre, a Mexican woman living in Wickenburg claimed she overheard a conversation between 2 Mexican men plotting a staged robbery. She warned her friends not to take the Wickenburg stage for the next few months. Let's see if I missed anything. Oh, hey, realist. 213. What up, though? Super awesome, guys. I thank you all for being here. I appreciate it. In 1916, a dying man said he still carried a silver watch fob bearing the letter L that he had obtained from a Mexican woman in Wickenburg about 3 months after the robbery. He claimed the watch fob belonged to the reporter Frank Loring. Molly Shepard believed a group of white men from Prescott who had shown a keen interest in how much money she was carrying might be responsible for the slaughter. Since only the bags of Molly and Kruger were broken into, a small group even suspected the couple may have perpetuated the biggest hoax by killing the passengers, then burying all the money they could carry in the desert, inflicting wounds upon themselves, and walking away from the ordeal much richer. Kruger claimed the attackers got away with close to 25 G's. Wow. Inspection of Kruger's gun when he arrived at Camp Day Creek showed it had not been fired, even though he swore he had two had shot two of the attackers. Debate still lingers over who laid in ambush for the Wickenburg stage as it bounced along the Paz Road that cool November morning. Did the perpetuators kill for money, for revenge, or maybe just for sport? We may never know. Journalist Fred Loring wrote of his experiences with the Wheeler expedition shortly before boarding the Wickenburg stage that fateful day. I am bootless, coatless, everything but lifeless, he said. I have had a fortnight of horrors. This morning, an Indian fight capped the climax. However, I am well and cheerful. He had no idea what was in store for him. That was pretty good. Pretty interesting story, dude. That's the end of that one. The next story, and I'll do another one for you guys. It's still kind of early. So about 22 minutes into it, so. This one is about Frank Nashville, Buckskin Frank Leslie, the lady killer. Ooh. Just to show you a picture of him. All right. May Leslie's knees buckled as she awaited the next volley of gunfire. The slightest movement from her might be her last, and she commanded her body to remain as rigid as the rotting corpse of bullets whizzed about her head. Maybe one more round would satisfy the gunman. She heard the bullets click into the chamber as her husband prepared to fire again. He always took careful aim, as careful as anyone full of liquor could muster. May watched him sway as he pointed the gun at her head. He slowly pulled the trigger and painted her portrait in bullets along the wall. As the gun clattered to the ground, so did Frank Leslie in a drunken stupor. May, known around Tombstone, Arizona as the Silhouette Girl, became, because of her husband's proclivity for shooting around her profile, fell in a trembling heap. She had survived 7 years of marriage to Frank Leslie, a man of sweet charm and deadly aim. But she figured her odds of surviving one more year were not good. Frank Leslie had been hanging around Tombstone since 1880, and he had earned a reputation as a hard-drinking, free-fisted, fast-shooting, storytelling ladies' man. He related so many versions of his origins that even he probably didn't remember the truth. He claimed he was born in the early 1840s in Texas, but once told the reporter his family roots were in Virginia. He also said he served in the Confederate Army as a bugler, studied medicine in Heidelberg, Germany, served as a deputy sheriff in Kansas under Wild Bill Hickok, prospected in Colorado, had been a rough rider in Australia, and a boat pilot in the Fiji Islands. Owned a bar in San Francisco and served as an Army scout in the Dakotas, Oklahoma, Texas, and along Arizona's borders. Somewhere he acquired the nickname Buckskin Frank and dressed to suit the title in a fringed buckskin jacket. Yes, fun-loving couple, there's someone new in chat. Linda Guess. Of course, Leslie never offered any proof of his past whereabouts or his accomplishments. Texas and Virginia birth records do not exist for Frank Nashville Leslie. Neither are there records of him serving in the Confederate Army or of him attending a Heidelberg medical school, or of any lawman named Leslie riding with Hickok. A couple of his stories have a semblance of truth, however. He probably did serve as a scout on the San Carlos Indian Reservation around 1877. and he tended bar in a couple of saloons in San Francisco until he moseyed into Tombstone. Moseyed, sorry. Moseyed. That's the first time I've ever seen that word. I've heard of moseying, but I've never had to spell it out or anything. Tombstone in 1880 was a town filled with gambling dens, saloons, and houses of pleasure. Leslie found work bartending at the Cosmopolitan Hotel, a two-story wooden building boasting a veranda, ladies' parlor, and sitting rooms. The saloon advertised a variety of wines, liquors, and the finest brands of cigars. When not working behind the bar, Leslie could be found visiting any number of Tombstone saloons, inviting enough liquor to satisfy an entire herd of trail dry cattle. His proclivity for liquor was only surpassed by his eye for the ladies, and he dressed to please them in his buckskin jacket, custom-made boots, and pearl-studded shirts. Meg Killeen had recently separated from her husband, Mike, and taken a room at the Cosmopolitan. She and Leslie had exchanged pleasantries on more than one occasion. Ooh, pleasantries, hmm? Hmm. Don't know what they meant by that. On the night of June 22nd, 1880, May asked Leslie to escort her home from a dance, and Leslie was more than happy to oblige. They headed for the hotel accompanied by Leslie's friend, George Perrine. No one noticed the shadowy figure watching as they entered the hotel. Now, Mike Killeen had already warned Leslie to stay away from his wife, and Leslie had taken the precaution of borrowing a gun for the evening. It was against the law to carry weapons in Tombstone. All had to surrender firearms at the first saloon they encountered upon entering town. Those who felt the need of protection could always borrow a gun from behind the bar. Leslie had no problem obtaining a weapon for his evening stroll with May Killeen. Mike Killeen watched the threesome enter the hotel and wasted no time following his wayward wife and Frank Leslie. George Perrine headed for the bar while Leslie and May made their way to the second floor veranda. From his place at the bar, Perrine spied Killeen entering the hotel. He shouted to Leslie that Killeen was on his way with murder in his eye and a gun in his hand. The roar of gunfire sent hotel guests stumbling sleepily from their rooms, only to hastily retreat behind locked doors as the two men emptied their guns. Killeen tumbled down the stairs and into the saloon with Leslie in hot pursuit. From behind the bar, Leslie grabbed a second pistol and fired another round at Killeen. When the smoke cleared, Killeen lay mortally wounded. He lingered for 6 days, long enough to swear Leslie started the ruckus. Leslie insisted Killeen came in shooting, and he had no recourse but to return fire. Arrested and charged with Mike Killeen's murder, Leslie relied on his own testimony and that of the not-so-grieving widow to swear Killeen came onto the veranda with gun blazing. It didn't take the coroner's jury long to acquit Leslie on the grounds of self-defense. On August 5th, just weeks after Leslie was released from jail, the same judge who officiated at Leslie's court hearing pronounced Frank Leslie and May Killeen man and wife. The ceremony took place in the parlor of the Cosmopolitan Hotel. The tombstone epitaph congratulated the couple on their nuptials, lauding Leslie as un chevalier sans peur et sans reproche, a knight without fear and reproach. I believe that's Latin, I guess. I'm not sure. I'll let you guys see it. Right here. I believe that's Latin. Let me know if that's Latin, guys. Leslie moved down the street to the Oriental Saloon to work for owner Milt Joyce. Oh, maybe you guys have heard that name before on the Tombstone movie. Milt Joyce, owner and operator. The Hurt brothers hung out at the Oriental and Leslie was welcome to drink with them. But he took no part in the infamous October 26, 1881 shootout at the OK Corral. Wyatt always said Leslie had the second fastest draw in the territory, just behind Doc Holliday. Over the years, Leslie developed an interest in prospecting and filed several mining claims in the Dragoon and Swiss Sound Mountains. But he preferred life in town where drinking, gambling, and a little bird watching embodied his nightly pleasures. When he had money, he spent it. When he didn't get what he wanted, he turned surly and dangerous. Those are the nights made Leslie soon learn to dread. As old-time Tombstone resident Billy King noted, he was a likable damn fellow when he was sober, but when he was tanked up, he turned as sour as a barrel of doggo red. Leslie's quick draw earned him a reputation on both sides of the badge. In March 1881, a detachment of 8 lawmen set out from Tombstone on the trail of bandits who had held up the stagecoach as it headed toward Benson. The posse consisted of lawmen Wyatt, Virgil, but they didn't even put the name right in there, it says Vigil. Wyatt, Virgil, and Morgan Earp. Cochise County Sheriff Johnny Behan and Deputy Sheriff Billy Breckenridge, and sworn-in deputies Doc Holliday, Bat Masterson, and Frank Leslie. Separating as they traveled, Leslie came upon one of the outlaws and reportedly sat down to eat with him before returning alone to Tombstone, claiming he had lost the trail. Rumors circulated that Sheriff Behan, supposedly a friend of the robbers, had paid Leslie to ride a cold course. The sun had barely risen over the horizon when Leslie walked into the Oriental Saloon on November 14, 1882. But already a group of men hovered near the bar having their usual liquored breakfast. Leslie was welcomed into their discussion, which may have political overtones, and the men finished several rounds before cocky young Billy Claiborne entered the saloon about 7:30 a.m. Claiborne was as mean as an angry snake. He had ridden with the murdering cattle rustler Johnny Ringo and often worked both sides of the border stealing cattle and horses. Claiborne blamed Leslie for John Ringo's death. Leslie and Ringo had been seen together shortly after Ringo was found straddling a tree with a bullet in his head. It was obvious Claiborne had downed his breakfast at a neighboring waterhole. He sidled up to the group at the bar and immediately interrupted the conversation. Leslie took him aside and asked him to leave. But Claiborne refused and again butted into the assemblage. Leslie booted Claiborne out the saloon door. Claiborne shouted he would return to get even, but Leslie just turned his back on the youngster. When Claiborne reappeared, he was carrying his Winchester. The street emptied as he headed toward the Oriental. "I don't allow any man to spit on me," he swore. Leslie warned that Claiborne was looking for him. He left the saloon by a side door. Rounding the corner to the main street, he saw Claiborne hiding behind a fruit stand and warned the youngsters not to shoot. But Claiborne stood up and fired, the bullet landing harmlessly at Leslie's feet. Leslie floored him with one shot. "I told him I was sorry." Leslie later stated, "I might have done more, but I couldn't do less." Bill Joyce, proprietor of the Oriental Saloon, also owned the Magnolia Ranch in the Swiss Sound Mountains east of Tombstone. Leslie had a 1/4 interest in the place, and Joyce left most of the ranchy business in Leslie's hands. Since Leslie spent more time there than Joyce, the Magnolia was often mistakenly called Leslie's Ranch. In 1883, Leslie experienced a run-in with Apache raiders at the Magnolia. He lost most of the horses and about 50 head of cattle to the marauders. 2 years later, in May 1885, when Geronimo and a band of Apaches escaped from the San Carlos Indian Reservation, Leslie was more than happy to hire on as a scout under Captain Wirt Davis. It took 3 months of hard riding before Davis and his men located Geronimo's camp. And although Geronimo escaped, the soldiers killed a handful of his men and captured a few women and children. Hey, Teresa P, what's up? Welcome in. Davis sent Leslie to inform General George Crook of the battle. According to Leslie, he had to swim the Bafispe River 11 times in one day to deliver the report. Leslie knew how to make himself look good in the eyes of the law. Each time Leslie returned from scouting, battling Apaches, and even one stint as an inspector along the Arizona-Sonora border looking for smugglers, he made up for lost time in the Tombstone saloons. He would then go home to May, slap her around a bit, and stand her up against the wall to practice his shooting. May knew he would soon die beneath his hands. May knew she would soon die beneath his hands or at the end of his gun. On May 27, 1887, she filed for divorce, claiming Leslie beat and choked her along with framing her silhouette in bullets. She also accused him of infidelity. The court awarded May half of Leslie's interest in the Magnolia Ranch, which he immediately sold back to Milt Joyce. Leslie eventually sold Joyce his remaining interest but continued to manage the place. Leslie was soon seen dallying with Molly Williams, also known as Molly Bradshaw, Molly Edwards, and Blonde Molly, a singer at the Birdcage Theater. She had arrived in town with a man named Mike Bradshaw. Shortly after Leslie made Molly's acquaintance, Bradshaw lay dead with his head bashed in. Ooh, jeez. Fingers pointed at Leslie, but no evidence was found implicating him. He and Molly headed off into the Swiss Hounds to Magnolia Ranch. Unfortunately, they did stay put on the ranch and often spent days frequenting drinking establishments from one end of Tombstone to the other. Molly could hold her own with Leslie, and the two often loudly disagreed well into the night as they guzzled copious amounts of liquor. In early July 1889, the couple headed to Tombstone to celebrate Independence Day. Their revelry continued for almost a week. Finally hitching up their horses, they headed out of town, drunk when they left and still sodded when they arrived back at the ranch on July 10th. An argument started in Tombstone continued to rage. The next day, Leslie, still swilling a potent brew, rode over to William Reynolds' ranch where he informed his neighbor he was going to kill him. He ordered Reynolds to defend himself, but when Reynolds, who had obviously seen Leslie in this condition, refused to pick up a rifle, Leslie left in a huff and staggered home. James Neal worked off and on for Leslie at the Magnolia Ranch. He understood his boss's frequent fits of rage and usually stayed out of sight when trouble boiled. But on the night of July 11th, he took pity on the tipsy Molly and sat with her while Leslie was off harassing his neighbor. Hey, Dream Calumet, how you doing? Thank you for dropping in. Neil had no time. Wait. When Leslie returned, he suspected Neil and Molly had been up to no good. After smacking Molly around a few times, he determined he would put a stop to all this. He picked up his pistol and aimed. With one shot, Molly fell dead to the floor in a heap of skirts and petticoats. God damn. Eee. Hey, thank you. Neil had no time to react before Leslie fired at him. Don't be afraid, it's nothing. Leslie told him, and at first Neil believed him. But as blood started trailing down his legs, Neil bolted through the door and into the desert. The next day, Rancher Reynolds found him collapsed on his doorstep. Leslie came looking for Neil at the Reynolds ranch and related the evening's events, claiming Neil had killed Molly and he had shot Neil in self-defense. Reynolds denied seeing Neil, so Leslie assumed the young man lay dead somewhere in the desert and figured there would be no witness to dispute his story. After Leslie left, Reynolds sent for the doctor who patched up Neil and took him into town. Neil told his story to the sheriff, leaving little doubt who had perpetrated the double shooting. 2 days later, deputies found a disheveled Leslie riding along the road into town and took him to the sheriff. Leslie confessed to killing Neil after Neil had slain his beloved Molly. Suddenly, Neil appeared in the doorway, weak but strong enough to call Leslie a liar. I thought he was dead, and he just left him there. Yeah. This time, the jury did not agree with Leslie's self-defense argument. He was sentenced to serve the remainder of his life in the Yuma Territorial Prison for the murder of blonde Molly. Leslie and 10 other prisoners were escorted from the Cochise County Jail to Yuma Territorial Prison in January 1890 under the watchful eye of Sheriff John Slaughter. According to the Tucson Citizen, they all arrived drunk. Maybe Leslie was able to persuade the sheriff. Where'd it go? To make one last stop before sending him into the depths of hell. Hey, what's happening, good citizen media? Welcome, brother. Appreciate you being here. Leslie actually spent only 7 years in Yuma prison. There was talk he was part of an attempted breakout in March 1890, but no mention of the incident appears in prison records. For the most part, he was a model prisoner and spent most of his time working in the prison infirmary as a pharmacist. Hey, anytime, man, anytime. I appreciate you guys always dropping in, man, showing the support. That's what it's all about. In 1893, a reporter from the San Francisco Chronicle visited Leslie at the prison. He must have believed every word out of Leslie's mouth, as the story he wrote is comprised of tall tales right from Leslie's vivid imagination. But when Belle Stoll of San Francisco read the Chronicle story, she began corresponding with Leslie and sending gifts of food and clothing to the imprisoned man. Eventually, their friendship blossomed into love. Leslie's exemplary behavior behind bars, plus the pleas of Belle Stoll and other friends who petitioned Arizona Territorial Governor Benjamin Franklin for his release, set him free on November 17, 1896. He ran right into the arms of Belle Stoll, and the two were married in Stockton, California on December 1st. How long the marriage lasted is uncertain, as Belle soon disappeared from Leslie's life. He went to Mexico in early 1897 to assist a geologist seeking coal deposits for the Southern Pacific Railroad. While there, he supposedly killed 3 men when they attempted to steal wood from the worksite. Leslie may have headed next for the Alaskan goldfields, but by 1902 he was back in San Francisco. When the Chronicle reported he sustained a gunshot wound as his pistol fell out of his pocket and went off, he told the reporter, "I suppose that my friends will tell me I'm not fit to carry a pistol. I After 40 years on the frontier, to be hurt by my own gun. Looks like it. Leslie worked as a stocker for a couple of grocery stores and as a janitor in a billiard hall, but he usually lived off handouts from the bar runs he frequented. White now living in California, sometimes staked his old friend to a set clean of clothes and maybe a drink or two. Leslie was last seen alive around 1920, sweeping floors in a San Francisco saloon. One night he disappeared, supposedly taking the bartender's gun with him. Maybe he was just borrowing it like he used to do in Tombstone. About 3 years later, a skeleton and rusty gun were found in the hills north of Martinez, California. The serial number on the gun was the same as the one taken from the bar that night. If the story is indeed real, said writer-historian Douglas Martin, then Leslie was not all bad. He did one good thing before he died. He killed himself. Man, that's rough. Leslie once admitted to killing 13 men. It was my 14th that caused all my trouble, he bemoaned. But then my 14th was a woman. Wow. Well, that's going to do it for that one. Wow. Ooh, jeez. What did you guys think? Pretty interesting, right? Yeah, that was the end of that one. Oh, I got two of them in, so I believe we're good for the day. Hey, I thank you guys very much. Thank you to the new viewer in our chat, Linda Guess, Druzy, Karen, Good Citizen, Joko, Dream, Luke, Teresa P, everybody, guys. You guys are all super awesome. I appreciate you guys being here. Hey, I'm doing all right, man. I'm doing good. Um, Actually, I just met a guy that told me the old museum down the street here. This guy that told me about it, his name's Clayton Gill. He's actually just down here just for the snowbirds. You know how everybody is this time of year. But he told me about the museum down over here, and it's got a lot of history, a lot of old relics, artifacts, and things in there. And the owner of the museum there, he's a local. He used to own a ranch over here near the Dos Cabezas here. And I believe that would be something interesting to live stream. If I'm able to do it, which I'll ask his permission, of course. But to go in there, to get a history lesson, from one of the locals, man, it's awesome. Even though I'm sharing this with you guys, it helps, getting it from someone else, and it's also interesting for you guys, the viewers. So yeah, that'll be something that I'm gonna look into. I'm gonna most likely probably go there, probably tomorrow, maybe. Hopefully it's open tomorrow, and talk to the guy that runs the shop, the museum there. And yeah, I'm looking at doing that for a live stream, so that would be something interesting. If you guys are interested in that, you guys would stay tuned. I will give you guys updates. I will post to my community page if anything happens, which most likely it'll be an okay, you know. Yeah, you have a lot of hours doing it. We can help with watch hours by playing it. Oh, okay, but I'll put it all in the playlist. Okay, yeah. Yeah, that would definitely help with watch hours. Drew, Druzy. Hey, Rosie Things, how you doing? Great to see you. Yeah, we're just sharing some true stories of Arizona's most famous robbers, rustlers, and bandits. Now, I do have PayPal and Cash App if you guys are willing to donate anything, which is greatly appreciated, and it always will be put to good use. Um, I do, however, need a few things. If you guys are willing to donate, and either way, if you guys don't, and if you guys can or whatever, it's all good. But I do need a couple of things from the store. Actually, it's just some hygiene items or whatever. You know, not much, but yeah, I just if you can do that, I'd be completely thankful for that. But if not, hey, I'm always grateful for you guys always coming through and supporting my channel. So I do have the opportunity tomorrow maybe to go to the museum there and talk to the owner and see what happens. Until then, just want to say thank you guys. I ain't gonna sign off just yet. I just want to play this music. It's really awesome. It's copyright free music, so it's pretty awesome. It comes in handy for the channel. Hey, Laren Directo, how you doing? And if you guys haven't hit that like button, make sure you do before the stream ends. Hey, thank you, Dream, Laren, everybody, Druzy, Karen, for always dropping links and helping everybody's channel grow one subscriber at a time. Thank you guys for the support. This is Jose G, the Lone Wolf of Arizona. Peace.